Question number 6, Eugenie Sage.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, thank you. My question is to the Minister for the Environment and asks, what new policy initiatives, if any, will he be making in response to the Environment Aotearoa 2015 report released yesterday in the areas of freshwater, biodiversity and greenhouse gas emissions?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, it's early days in that ministers and policy officials only received the report yesterday, but we have a very active program in all 3 key areas. On freshwater, we are planning regulatory changes around the microvertebrate index, fencing of waterways and a new clean-up fund. The Land and Water Forum is finalising recommendations on these. On biodiversity, we are ramping up efforts with programs like Battle for Our Birds and the War on Weeds. The new Threatened Species Ambassador will also help this work. On climate change, we are working on new initiatives around electric cars and strengthening the ETS. Obviously, on this issue, the Paris negotiations are crucial and New Zealand will be taking a very active part.
Supplementary question. Order. Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Among those regulatory changes, will the Minister improve the National Policy Statement Objective A1 for water quality from a secondary contact standard suitable for boating and wading to one suitable for swimming?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
No, and I'll tell the member why. Even before human beings arrived in New Zealand, not every single water body in New Zealand was swimmable. And it is impractical to suggest that somehow we can even overrule nature. It is also true that during significant storm events, when there is a large amount of pollution introduced to the system, there are times when it is not practical to be able to have every water body that is swimmable. What we are committed to is an improvement in water standards, and I'm concerned about that member's repeated exaggeration about the areas of which it is unsafe to swim in New Zealand, because in the vast bulk of areas it is perfectly safe.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Is the Minister effectively saying that only having rivers which are fit for wading and boating and not for swimming will allow the dairy industry room to expand further?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr.
No, what I am saying is that the member's proposition that somehow Parliament can pass a rule and magically make every water body in New Zealand safe to swim is false. Even before human beings arrived in this country, there were water bodies that were not safe to swim, and this government is not going to impose regulations and laws that are impractical, as the Green Party would attempt to do.
Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Does he stand by the Prime Minister's statement that the environment could handle more dairy farming, even though the Environment Aotearoa report says at page 10 that nitrogen levels are high enough in 49% of monitored river sites to trigger algal blooms?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
That's where the member does not understand the variation across New Zealand. In an area like Taupo, where there does need to be limits on nitrogen, we're actually 3 years ahead of a schedule, and it is not possible for new dairy farms in that catchment. There are other catchments where nitrogen limits are not needed and where there is expansion for dairying, and that is where the Green Party policy of a blanket ban on any more dairy farms in New Zealand does not make sense.
Supplementary question, Scott Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, how does the Environment Aotearoa 2015 report released yesterday match up with the government's ambition of being a world leader in responsible management of our oceans?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, the report is very encouraging and shows a decline in the number of fish stocks that are subject to overfishing from 25% to 14% in the last 5 years. The global average is 28% of stocks, indicating that our fisheries are some of the best managed in the world. The report also notes that seabird bycatch over the last 5 years has almost halved, and since that we have subsequently announced the Kermadec Ocean Sanctuary, which will be the largest no-take area anywhere in the world, showing how this government is stepping up to the challenge environmentally of better ocean management.
Order. Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Will the Minister push to strengthen New Zealand's emissions reduction target when the report also says that ocean acidification caused by carbon dioxide emissions, quote, poses the greatest threat to our marine habitats, end quote?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
New Zealand's climate change ambition of a 30% reduction by 2030 is a big ask. What this government will not do is what the previous Labor government did with big bold targets of carbon neutrality at a time when emissions went through the roof. Actually, there has been less growth in greenhouse gas emissions under this government than under any government, and ETS and other measures, such as, for instance, the announcement to close down New Zealand's biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions, the Huntly Power Station, shows the progress that we're making.
Supplementary question, Eugenie Sage.
Why has he allowed the proposed National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity to languish since mid-2011 when the report says that the extinction risk for 42 land species has worsened in the 6 years from 2005 to 2011?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
What the report identifies is that the biggest risk to New Zealand's native plants and birds is actually pests. And that is why this government has launched the biggest pest control program ever. That will see, rather than 50,000 hectares per year being controlled with poisons like 1080, growing that to 500,000 hectares, a huge lift. And my question to the Green Party, why do they oppose poisons rather than actually back the tools that will ensure our species survive?
True.
Supplementary question.
Given that the biggest threat is pests,
Order. Just supplementary question, Eugenie.
biggest threat is pests, will he support a real increase rather than another cut in funding for the Department of Conservation in Budget 2016, given that 81% of our land birds, 72% of our freshwater fish, 27% of our marine mammals and all of our frogs face extinction?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Budget matters will be resolved when the budget is read next year. But I would say the amount of actual practical work that is being done with the initiative that Maggie Barry took this year with the program for Kiwis, the new endangered species ambassador, and the huge lift in the amount of pest control work that's delivered, this government is more interested in terms of the things that will work than actually just spending money willy-nilly, as is the practice of that party.
Supplementary question, Mika Whaitari.
To the Minister, when will he accept that the decision to ignore Judge Shepherd's National Policy Statement on water quality is a primary reason for why, under his watch, water quality continues to get worse?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
The member is misinformed. Judge Shepherd never had a national policy statement. What I'd point out to that member is Labor promised a national policy statement on fresh water for 9 straight years and did nothing, and it was a national government that put in place such a policy statement.
Question number 7, Chris Bishop.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Primary Industries